You tested out as drifting potential, our second largest group. Look, you know you're capable of more. And that's what makes trying to improve so frustrating, because this is not about lack of intelligence and it's not lack of potential. You kind of feel it in flashes, you have moments of clarity and moments of vision where you can actually see the life that you want, and then something happens, right? The focus fades, life pulls you back into autopilot, and distractions, they take over. Priorities, they scatter, and slowly you drift away from what matters most. Not because you stopped caring, that's important, but because direction was never stabilized internally. And over time, that creates a dangerous identity pattern. We consistently hear something like this from people with drifting potential. I know I could do more, but I never fully, completely move all in. Listen to me now. This is not laziness. This is just misdirected energy. Now, when I first began studying this 22, 23 years ago, I went deep into behavioral science, ancient wisdom, and performance psychology. And what becomes clear is this: people with drifting potential usually do not lack ambition, they lack anchored direction. They get emotionally inspired, but structurally, they're not aligned. So energy gets scattered across many ideas, too many priorities, too many directions, and eventually, momentum, it kind of dissolves into that drift that you experience. But here's what most people miss. This pattern is learned and it is not permanent. The science backs this. In a 25-year NASA study, Dr. George Land discovered something extraordinary. When testing adults, he rarely found creative geniuses NASA was looking for. That's what they hired him for. So he began testing younger and younger and younger age groups. Now, here's the mind blower. It's a shocker. 98% of 5-year-olds tested at the level of creative genius. But when the same individuals were tested again 25 years later, only 2% tested at creative genius. Not because capability disappeared, but because conditioning trained it down through institutions and schools. And renowned behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner, who, believe me, rightfully should be considered at least the equal of Freud and Jung, he confirmed exactly the same thing Land discovered, that behavior shaped by environment, by repetition, by reinforcement, sounds like school, right? So that creativity, that direction, that imagination, that genius, it didn't disappear. It's still in you. They both concluded the same thing. The genius wasn't lost. It was conditioned down, okay? We were trained in school to what? Follow instead of learning how to think for ourselves. Comply instead of developing our individuality and our gifts. Gifts, okay? And worst of all, to compete instead of what? Collaborating and creating. And over time, we move further and further away from how we were naturally born to think, create, and operate. But here's the empowering part. You didn't stop creating your life. Listen to me now. You've been creating all along. You already have an internal, automated, manifesting mechanism. Your habits shape your results. That's why the stuff all over social media about learning how to manifest and getting the right vibration, it's total nonsense. It's BS. You've been manifesting perfectly since your early teens. See, your thoughts shape your habits shape your actions, and of course, your actions dictate the results. So this isn't about learning how to create. It's about, for you, learning how to create intentionally. And for the person with drifting potential, that changes everything. Why? Because your problem is not lack of capability. It's a lack of aligned direction. You have ideas, vision, potential, but without structure, your energy keeps drifting away from what matters most. And that's exactly why the drift loop that you're in has got to be broken. because the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever pattern is repeated the most, even when the pattern is distraction, fragmentation, and drift. And until that drift loop is interrupted, you'll continue confusing temporary inspiration with actual transformation.
I always felt like I had potential, but I couldn't hold it. This changed that.
Now here's what gets fascinating and everything shifts. Across ancient wisdom traditions dating back over 5,000 years, there's this recurring symbolic idea that appears across all cultures and all continents, the Jinn, Jinn. One of the earliest recorded descriptions of this wish-granting force, sort of a trickster god. Now over time, that same symbolic pattern evolved from Jinn, Jinn. You can see how it went to the genie in the bottle and eventually the story of Aladdin and the magic lamp. Now stay with me here, because this was never about magic, and this isn't some woo-woo stuff, okay, or fairy tales for children. The reason the story has survived for thousands of years across every civilization is because it was always a metaphor for the remarkable subconscious mind. In other words, the creative genius that Dr. Land discovered that we all have, a force beneath the conscious thought that responds to repeated instruction. And the ancients understood something modern psychology now confirms. And of course, modern psychology is trying to take credit for it. But anyway, the subconscious mind ultimately reinforces whatever pattern is repeated most. Even when the pattern is self-sabotage, and until that pattern is interrupted, people keep repeating emotional cycles, behavioral loops, and identity patterns like drifting, without realizing they're being conditioned by repetition, by their own thoughts. And that's exactly why the ancients just didn't leave us stories. They left us instructions. The instructions, abracadabra. What popped into your head just now? Magic? A magician? Maybe the great song by Steve Miller? Or why am I even listening to this? See, abracadabra were the instructions that train that creative genius that's in each and every one of us. Here's what it really means, dating back to 2450 BC. Abracadabra is really two words. Abra, I create, cadabra, as I speak, meaning your internal dialogue is constantly programming your subconscious direction. And that subconscious direction shapes, you know what's coming next, your behavior, your habits, your focus, and ultimately the results. Now, inside the best-selling book, Standing Tall, now published, surprise me, in 3 languages, you'll discover the 7 ancient verities. Verity means truth. Truth doesn't change. And when you align with truth, you realize hope is not a strategy, but truth creates the opportunity for authentic transformation. Your performance becomes consistent. These ancient verities that you're going to study, they're not motivational ideas, they're conditioning interrupters, patterns of thought and action designed to interrupt that drift loop, replace destructive conditioning, and retain and retrain the subconscious mind toward aligned direction and execution. Now, this is just common sense, but you see, repetition and reinforcement created the old pattern, and repetition and positive reinforcement is what rewires it. And for a person with drifting potential, that rewiring becomes life-changing. Why? Because drifting potential is not a lack of talent. It's unanchored imagination, scattered focus, misaligned direction. So yes, we spend 2 weeks on each of these short verities, and that repetition and reinforcement rewires the subconscious. That's why Verity 2 becomes a breakthrough for people in the drift loop. Verity 2, imagination. For so many people with potential who drift, this becomes the turning point, because you begin replacing worry, negative self-talk, and internal confusion with an imagination that's aligned with your core motive. I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a minute. And when imagination aligns with purpose, desire intensifies, direction sharpens, and drift, it just begins to disappear. And then in Verity 5, this shatters the drift loop. It's called First Things First. It gives you direction, structure, and execution order. You stop scattering energy across distractions and begin focusing on what actually matters most, because drifting ends when direction becomes what? I've already told you, anchored.
This helped me turn my scattered ideas into real execution and real results.
Once you get started, you'll take a complete short assessment that allows us to generate a full color code profile. And through that profile, you discover your core motive. I told you to come back to that. Not just how you behave, but why you behave that way. Because most personality systems measure behavior, and most of them are pretty good, but color code goes way deeper and measures your core motive, the internal driver behind your decisions, your energy patterns, your focus shifts, and your relationships, and most importantly, your direction in life. Most people spend years trying to improve performance without ever understanding the motive that's driving them. And once we understand your motive, everything becomes more aligned. And this is where most programs actually fall way short. They give you information, but no personalization. That's why when you enroll, okay, right there in Standing Tall, you also receive a private one-on-one strategy session with me. So we can review the results together, go through your full 27-page color code breakdown, identify your strengths and draw them out, your blind spots, your growth patterns, and actually build together a customized direction and execution plan based on your type, your goals, your lifestyle, your relationships, your current challenges, and most importantly, the season of where you are in your life. Because transformation happens faster when the strategy is built specifically for you, which I'm going to do with you. Not generic advice, a personalized roadmap.
This helped me stop overthinking and finally stay consistent long enough to see results.
For over 15 years, we've been doing this very successfully, and we've helped more than 4,000 people break their patterns. It was developed, tested, refined, perfected, and now it's proven. Now, inside the Standing Tall members area, you receive an instant download of the bestseller Standing Tall, your 7 Ancient Verities workbook to reinforce what you're learning, your color code profile, your motivational pattern breakdown, that's a thrill, your direction and execution framework. And then you're going to fill out a short survey. And once you do, so that I can understand more about your hopes and goals, we'll give you access to my calendar for your one-on-one appointment. So now I have a whole picture and your personality profile and structured guidance from that point on to move from drifting potential into aligned execution and focused direction. Plus, this is big, you're supported through 2 live Zoom mastermind sessions. You won't be doing this alone, because Napoleon Hill said, and he was right, no one achieves any lasting success without a mastermind alliance. So twice a month, we come together for a live Zoom to keep you aligned, to keep you accountable, and to work out challenges that you might have and keep you moving towards purpose consistently. Let's be candid here. Accountability anchors direction. Now let's be clear. This is not motivation. This is directional alignment. If you're ready to stop drifting, just click below. Go through Standing Tall, get your color code, book your one-on-one private session with me, and begin building the life that's aligned with your core motive and your deeper purpose. You do not overcome drift by trying harder, okay? You overcome drift by becoming aligned internally. And once that happens, you stop wandering through your potential and finally begin what? Living it. So hit the link. I'll see you on the inside. Peace be the journey.